All right. major question for the panel today in regards to fire services. So we're going to get these technical difficulties taken care of, and so that we can proceed with the interviews, and we can begin to start delivering this great, beautiful knowledge. All right. Before they get here, while we work on that, Mohammed, we're gonna go ahead and get with you on cybersecurity until we hear some other people talking up here.
I
We're
can hear
gonna
you
work.
now.
Oh,
Oh,
okay,
great, great.
okay. How about you, sir? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right,
Beautiful.
outstanding.
I was just about to send both of you an email, so I'm glad you can hear.
There we go.
And we can hear you now as well. Thank you.
All right. Well, we have just introduced the show. This is our final show of the year until January, and we are much obliged to have you here today. And we are looking forward to you enlightening. I just made up a word, enlightening us. I just ran it all together. I'll probably do that about 3 more times today. But we will be glad to have you guys enlighten us on your job description, where you work at, what you do, and how you serve the community. So we want to go ahead and get started right now with the North Carolina Fire Service.
That would be the
Hey, how's it
Ranger.
going?
Greetings, sir.
Thank y'all for having us aboard. My name is Will. I'm one of the county rangers here in Pitt County, and I work for the North Carolina Forest Service.
Okay, sir. Could you tell us a bit about the service you deliver, what you do, how long you've been with the North Carolina Fire Service, Forestry Service?
Sure, I'm pretty new to the position. I've only been here for a couple months. What we mainly do with the Forest Service is broken into two halves. First half we'll call forest management. For that portion, we try and make sure the forests are as healthy as they can be. Could be things like dealing with pests or just making sure that the trees are growing up nice and straight and tall. A lot of this comes down to consulting with folks who own forested areas, could be private landowners or some public as well. And we help advise them on how to make sure their forest is being managed, again, to keep it as healthy as possible. We're also sometimes more in logistics. Maybe somebody's had some trees cut down on their property, they've sold them, and they want to know how to replant the area and get that forest growing back. So we can help advise them in that capacity. The other half of it, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm Doug. I was going to ask you something. Doug, go ahead. Go finish.
Okay, no worries. Kind of the other half of what we do, we'll call fire control. And that one's fairly simple, pretty easy to understand. Anytime there's a wildfire out there, if somebody were to pick up the phone, call 911, eventually that'll make us to us here with the Forest Service, and we'll go out there and we do what we call fire suppression. Basically, we're just trying to keep that wildfire contained, make sure everything's under control, make sure it doesn't get anywhere it's not supposed to.
Great. And what I was going to ask you was, to my knowledge, there has been a major, I don't know if it's major, but a situation where residents may have been burning something in their yard. And because of that, the smoke and the smell and what have you lingers in somebody else's property into their residence. So is that an ongoing problem?
Sure. Depending on weather conditions, sometimes fires can smolder for a long time, just kind of barely burning, just slowly going on. It creates a lot of smoke. And if there's not a lot of wind, that smoke can hang around. And of course, that's no fun to breathe in.
So, sir, what is your jurisdiction? I know you say Pitt County, but what is your jurisdiction when it comes to, is it just Pitt County?
Sure. So for me personally, it is just Pitt County. That's the county that I'm assigned to. But the North Carolina Forest Service does work statewide. So in all 100 counties, there's a couple representatives here and there trying to hold things down, make sure everybody's being safe.
Normally, I drive by, let's say, to past New Bern going towards Morehead City, and I'll see a fire number or something in reference to whether you can burn or not. What is your way of communicating in Pitt County whether it's safe to burn, or if there's in fact any fire or wildfire actually happening. What's your method to notify the public? I know everybody's got little alarms that go off on our devices, but is there anything coming from the North Carolina Forestry Service that will indicate what we need to do in emergencies?
Yeah, absolutely. That number you mentioned is a big part of it. So we kind of have a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being a day where you would really not expect a wildfire to occur, and 5 being a day where it is potentially pretty likely. And we try and make sure we keep all that information up to date and posted on the North Carolina Forest Service website. You can see information not only for Pitt County up there, but really for anywhere in North Carolina. And on those days, sometimes if we're getting closer towards that 5, that little bit of a higher likelihood of a wildfire occurring, a lot of times that information will make it out to the local news, local media as well. So we can make sure that message reaches the folks.
Yeah, one other thing I want to mention to you is that I was recently at a speaking engagement at Martin Community College, giving my information on how to approach individuals with a brain injury and other things related to distracted driving and things of that nature. At this particular day, all the staff there was from Greenville Fire Rescue, so I really appreciated being there because I told them, since I'm basically in their jurisdiction, I wanted to point out some things concerning me personally, and since I'm a part of their community. So upon arriving to Martin Community College, on one of their entrances, I noticed a building that says North Carolina Forest Service Regional Headquarters or something like that. Is that maybe because they have a lot of woodland area? They probably had a lot of wood fires and things of that nature.
So some of our headquarters, like the regional headquarters you mentioned, they're spread out throughout the state. Several counties will be kind of grouped together in a little cluster, and they'll kind of work with each other. And those headquarters just help to make sure everybody's coordinated as best we can.
Right. That's what I figured. Thank you.
When it comes to being a first responder, and I keep putting my hands up and I'm on social media, what in the world? When it comes to crime in the forest, I know as a young person, I moved around in the forest. I moved around in the local wooded area, and I would find marijuana growing at times, or we would go back there and sneak. Somebody took a bottle of alcohol from their family member or something, and we'd go back in the woods and drink it. Or I do recall growing up a couple of times where a body was found in a wooded area. During your everyday activity, or how many times a year do you cross over with local law enforcement in working on a case, working on issues that take you out of your purview, that your normal job description?
That'd be difficult to answer just because it is infrequent. The North Carolina Forest Service does have some law enforcement agents, but they are pretty much restricted just to investigating the sources of wildfires. So if there's a chance that maybe there's like an arson-based wildfire out there, which is very rare, some folks will be able to track that down. But if there's other things that kind of got out of the scope of practice of the Forest Service, they'd be referred to a different first responding agency, and kind of leaning on their expertise there.
So if you found some big old trees of marijuana, you just call in the other guys, or you just drive on by. Which one?
We'd refer it to another agency.
Okay, it was a setup right there. That was a trick question. Sounds good. When it comes to networking, I want to ask you this question because I'm going to ask Greenville PD the same thing. And we're playing this, not a hypothetical game today on the show. Are we ready for from time to time, we will feel a earth tremor in this area, if that's what you call them. To me, I'm just going to call it an earthquake because I felt like 2 of them in the last 10 years. Very distinguishable movements. But when it comes to natural disasters, sir, and you're likely to know this answer, 1, because you came on the show today, and 2, you're fresh out of training. Are we ready for a wildfire? And from the best of your knowledge, how are we linked to other counties, the other aspects of the Forestry Service? Are we ready for a natural disaster for the forestry outfit?
Can I ask you, Vernon, before you answer that, sir, can I ask you, are you referring to mutual aid from other jurisdictions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'm basically asking him our state of readiness, because we don't see you guys very often. And I know I lived on Fire Tower Road for quite some time near the fire tower. And I remember years ago in the 90s, I used to see someone go up there. And then I grew up in Pamlico County. We got to watch our time. I grew up in Pamlico County, and I believe they used to man a tower in Grantsboro, I believe. So I gave you a moment, a filibuster, just to think about my question, and I don't take sugar-coated answers. Do you think we are ready for a wildfire in this area?
And we certainly didn't forget about Miss Jessica Blackwell.
No, she going to get hers too, because I see that $4 million fire truck driving around Greenville all the time, and I think that thing ought to stay in the garage until we need it. But anyways, so she got to get ready to answer that question.
All right,
sir.
Okay.
2.1 million. 2.1 million.
No, I saw 4 in the newspaper. Okay, get the numbers right.
That's right. Get them straight.
That's all the equipment.
Okay, I want a refund on my tax money then. All right, Mr. North Carolina Fire Service.
Ranger.
Are we ready?
Yeah, the North Carolina Forest Service, like I said, the two things we do are forest management and fire suppression. We are ready to suppress fires anytime.
There is
great.
Do you go, when it comes to coordinating with agencies, since Dr. Johnson brought it up, have you or met anyone that's gone to California or networked with other states? You know, those fires last for days and days and days, and it looks like to me they have to bring in troops from everywhere. We'll talk out the last 2 minutes, and we'll start out after the break with Greenville PD. But have you gone?
Fire Rescue.
Yeah, have you gone or ready to go to another state, and who has, and how do we do that?
Sure. I've not gone personally, but there are plenty of folks here in Eastern North Carolina who work with the North Carolina Forest Service who do get sent out on those deployments. There's plenty of interagency cooperation. There's lots of infrastructure, if you will, to facilitate that cooperation out there. A lot of times, firefighters from the eastern part of the U.S. do get sent out west periodically during the summer to help out with the western outfits. Just when their workload becomes so big with their bigger fires out there. So everybody tries to help each other as best they can.
You are such a calm, collective, nice guy. That fire is a monster. That is a beast. It has its own personality. And I just went through fire training, and I didn't even go in the fire, but just learning about it in CJC school. It's got its own personality, and I'd like to come back to you, and we'll talk about that fire and what a beast it can be. This 45 seconds left in this segment, and we will be back shortly. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Miss Jessica, and then we'll kind of bring things together between the two of y'all and go back and forth about the personality of this fire. People need to respect it. I used to start them all the time when I was little, and thank God I never hurt anyone.
Are you an arsonist?
Well, I grew out of that. I did. I grew out of that. I guess you say state of mind to see what fire looks like when it consumes something. So, but ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. This is the final show of the year. Police Report First Responders. We'll be right back after these sponsors a message.
Do you and your family fear God? family life.
Awesome Radio 1069 WBIS LP.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Police Report First Responders, WBIS LP 106.9. We have two distinguishable guests here today, and they happen to be from the world of firefighting. That is to me, to be respected, probably above and beyond in the aspect of crime or in the aspect of just an assault on nature. That fire has a personality that is a beast, and the professionals here today know and understand that, and they try to keep us safe every day. So I'm going to start out, allow Miss Jessica of the Greenville Fire Department to express herself, what she does in her department, and then I got a heavy question right out the gate for her.
So I'm the fire and life safety educator and public information officer for all 6 of the fire stations, soon to be 7. I know you talked about you used to live near the fire tower. So that's where our 7th station will be located on Bayswater Road. So we're super excited to see that new fire station come to life, hopefully after the beginning of the new year.
Is that station number 7?
That will be station number 7.
Thank you.
All right. Right into the aspects. What are some of the technological advances that we should probably recognize at this point, because they're new, that you guys use to fight fire? Is it data? What are some of the technologies that you use to fight fire now?
So, of course, we have new vehicles and apparatuses on the roads, as you were talking about. Our new tiller truck, it did cost $2.1 million, and then we had to supply new equipment on the truck as well. So that was put on the road since I started a little over a year and a half ago, and it's something that was not a part of our fleet before. And it really is to supply a vehicle to the upper area of Uptown, because as you can tell, whenever you drive through Uptown, we're growing up. Those buildings are starting to become more high-rise buildings, and it can actually do a really sharp turn. It can go in one bay door and completely do a turnaround and go in the same bay door. So it can really do really tight mobility turns and get into really tight areas. And it has a very tall ladders, over 100 foot. It's like 112 foot in the air. So it is an aerial apparatus. So we have data. We actually are hiring a data analyst. The application closed on the 2nd of November. So that job is currently open. So we do have a position available right now for that person.
Glenn, you need a job? You need a data personnel?
I'm retired.
Man, they keep extending you. Glenn would keep that job for about 2 weeks, boy. You send him out of there.
I'm allergic to work.
That fire truck.
But I got a question for Miss Jessica Blackwell.
Go ahead.
When you was talking about that truck, Miss Blackwell, if you can confirm this with me, I think it's a house at Station 3. If Station 3 is on Charles Boulevard, it's that new ladder truck, the one that's able to make U-turns in a cul-de-sac.
Yes, so it's actually housed at Station 1, which is the one that's downtown 500 South Green Street. It's our headquarters. And we actually had to extend our bays. So we had to have a renovation of our bay area. So that's the new brickwork that's added on. We had to have an extension added on so that it could house the tiller truck, because it is a substantially large, it's our largest truck. And even though it is our largest truck, it has the best mobility of all of our apparatuses, even though it is our longest truck.
That's that day we went to see the apparatus over on Dickinson Avenue. Yeah, remember that? Yeah. Thank you, Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ms. Jessica, hopefully, I'm sure you've done your homework. What is the top issue we're having in the city of Greenville when it comes to fires? Is it house fires? Is it car accidents? The car gets on fire? Is it smoke alarms going off, false alarms? What is your top responding area for when it comes to fire?
Well, we always have false alarms. That's something we just always have. Our number one fire issue is always going to be unattended cooking. And now that we're coming up on the holidays, I always want to just talk about that, because across the board, across the nation, the number one cause of fire is unattended cooking, period. It could be that you turn a pot on and then you fall asleep. You're intoxicated. You turn a pot on and then you leave and go to the store, because I've seen that happen since I've been on this job. There's just a number of reasons why people turn a grease pot on and just leave or forget about it. Maybe you turn a pot on and you're older and you just forget about it. You have dementia. There's just a ton of reasons why people forget about it. But that's the number one cause of fire, is just unattended cooking.
And my question for you, Miss Jessica, is when I was a firefighter in New Jersey, and since we had a hospital, which is a university hospital now in our jurisdiction, we would just constantly get calls to respond to a fire alarm at the hospital. So my question to you, is that the case here in Greenville with ECU Health?
Yeah, so we do respond to calls at the hospital, but I would say we respond to more calls on campus than we do at the hospital, especially now that students are back on campus. There was definitely an uptick when students came back to school.
That's good knowledge. Yeah. I didn't
And
think about that.
another thing to keep in mind is that you start seeing that uptick in the alarms going off in the student housing. And if they're constantly going off, students are not thinking that it's a real alarm. So they're just going to stay in their rooms. And so whenever there is an actual fire, they're not going to come out. So that's something that, we have to really teach. Like, even if you don't think there's a fire, you still need to get out and stay out until the fire department gives an all clear.
Absolutely.
I've seen that happen. I work in one of those facilities as a concierge on the weekends, Thursday through Sunday. And I've seen that happen. It hasn't happened in the facility that I'm in yet. But if the students, young adults, do not evacuate that building, if that fire alarm goes off, I'm going to be slightly perturbed. I'm going to be upset. I've seen it where I saw 30% of the building get evacuated. And by the time the rest comes, the unit commander or chief is given the all clear to go back in, because they eliminated the problem. What are you doing about that? Do you sort of educate? You can call back to the property manager and say, look, you've only getting a certain amount of evacuation, even during a false alarm. We don't want everybody to go to sleep on these alarms. What's your response to that?
Yeah, so it's a pretty loud, obnoxious sound. So you would think that these students wouldn't want to stay in the units. At that point, education is needed. And at that point, it's up to the property manager. And each floor has an RA that they should be educating their students. And whenever there is an alarm that sounded, it's our responsibility to make sure that our firefighters are going on every single floor and making sure that it is cleared out. Yeah. Even if it's not an actual fire.
And if I could point out one thing that I would quote Deputy Fire Marshal Jay Morris, Pitt County, when it comes to cooking, the number one ingredient is safety. Would you agree?
Yeah, and knowing how to cook.
That's yes. Right. Yeah, knowing how to cook.
Yes, I responded to a smoky hallway a weekend ago, and this past weekend another smoky hallway. And hey, man, I just burnt a pack of bacon. So I responded to not unattended cooking, but to people that could not cook, or they were just burning the items.
Just like she said, you got to know how to cook.
16 seconds. When we come back, we're going to talk to Muhammad, and we're going to come back to the Greenville Fire and Rescue. Thank you ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here, first responders. We'll be right back after these sponsors.
What does Meals on Wheels do? They deliver.
FM.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Before we finish up with Miss Jessica from Greenville Fire and Rescue, please stay for a moment. You got a few more moments, Miss Jessica? Okay, she does, ladies and gentlemen.
And we have the Ranger back too. I think he has to leave shortly though.
Oh, he's back. Okay. Because I wanted to ask him about the prescribed burning, and do we have any in Pitt County? Let's see what Muhammad has in regards to cybersecurity corner right quick. Let's take about 2 minutes, sir. What do you got? I heard we were going to talk a little bit about hackers. What do we need to know about hackers, sir?
Well, we both know that hackers and scammers are very sneaky. They can pretty much strike at any time. So you should always keep yourself up to date by looking up the news if it rates an attack. So that way you can prepare yourself for what's upcoming next to you. And you can know how to protect yourself. For example, just recently, you randomly receive random pop-outs of antiviruses, right? Don't accept it, because that's a sign of a malware attack. Most likely hackers would try to gain access to your device. If you click it, you will receive a warning. This doesn't seem safe. So if that's the case, then don't accept it. It's because that's the way hackers would try to gain access to your device without you really noticing it.
Yeah, because the average person would think that that's something that they need to do, when it actually is not. Which brings me to this question. I couldn't remember the terms of the last time you were on the show, but I got the document that has both of these on there. Microsoft
Defense,
Defender, and Microsoft Security Essentials. How are both of those different from any antivirus you might buy as a third party that you might pay for when the Microsoft stuff is free? Is there any real big difference besides the companies trying to make money, are the ones that's third party?
If you wanted to be sure if they're legit, always review it before accepting it.
Right, that's a good point.
So he's saying do your homework and see if it actually is an upgrade level of security.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad. So Muhammad says, when you hear something about hacking, understand, or when you see strange things going on in your computer asking you to accept certain things, it's usually someone trying to gain access to your computer. All right, well, let's head on back over to our heroes when it comes to fighting fires, the brains, and we also have a frontline gentleman here. What was his former title?
He's a ranger.
He is a ranger, man. That, wow, that sounds like an awesome name. I'm gonna ask him a question right quick before we go back over to Miss Jessica, because I know he was a little short for time. I thought it was gone, but I think he made arrangements. Prescribed burning, is that farmers out just prescribed burning to sort of recycle their land or cycle their land through, or is that something you guys do in Pitt County? I haven't seen any. Do we have prescribed burning in Pitt County?
Sometimes we do. A lot of times, like you mentioned, it could be landowners just either looking to clear some debris off their land. Maybe they want to prepare a site so that the next time they plant trees on it, they grow a little bit better. Or sometimes they're doing it for a natural resource benefit as well.
And ranger, is that the same as a controlled fire?
Kind of the joke is there's no such thing as a controlled fire. You can prescribe it, but it could get out of control potentially. So we like to call them prescribed burns.
Right. Thanks for answering that. I wanted to know that specifically. Yeah, thank you.
Before we go, I want to make sure I can, if I don't get a chance to get back to you like right away, what is it you like the general public to know about the North Carolina Forestry Service? What's most important to you? And what would be your message today to the audience?
Sure. I'll answer that last one first. Just be safe out there. Anytime you're burning, you want to make sure that you got a way to either put the fire out or at least to knock down its intensity a little bit. So anytime you're messing with fire, be safe about it.
Thank you, sir. Feel free to hang along with the discussion. Miss Jessica, I still see the fire truck go along with the ambulance sort of as a team, even if there is a drunk person laying on the side of the road. Why is the fire truck there? I think I know the answer, but I'm trying to get an update on this.
You know, you should know that answer.
So every single 911 call, a paramedic is responsible to arrive on scene. And so if a squad vehicle is not available, so we only have 2 squads throughout the whole city. So if a squad vehicle is not available, a fire truck has to arrive on scene because there's a paramedic on the fire trucks.
So for staffing reasons, they just take the extra vehicle that needs to, go to the scene. And that happens to be a fire truck.
Yes. So sometimes there is a paramedic on. If there is a paramedic on the EMS unit, then there will not be a fire truck that arrives on scene. But if there's not a paramedic on the EMS unit, then you may get a fire truck as well.
Okay, great. Let me ask you a question. Does Greenville Fire Department do burn buildings for training, old homes and things of that nature? I haven't heard of it in the city of Greenville. That was just a question I had.
So we currently do not do that. We actually don't allow any burning throughout the city limits of Greenville, period.
Okay, so y'all do your training elsewhere. If you need to burn a structure, it's going to be at a training facility or in a rural area in somewhere else that is set up to burn.
Yeah, currently we're burning outside of the city limits elsewhere for training purposes.
Okay. Before I go back to the North Carolina Forestry Service, Ms. Jessica, what would be your primary message today? What is it you think that the Pitt County citizens need to hear or the city of Greenville need to hear from you? What is your pet peeve that's not written on paper that you need the general public to do and understand about safety here, and that would make your job easier? If your job is easier, means that you don't have fires, you don't have emergencies to respond to. So we want to make your job easy. What is it we can do to help you get that done?
Okay, well, there's a couple. So I'm gonna do 2. Test your smoke alarms. I'm gonna do 3. Okay. Test your smoke alarms. Make sure they're not older than 10 years old because they're not supposed to be older than 10 years old. And then don't make your own homemade fire pits. Sometimes people think you can make your own homemade fire pits.
Wait, ho. Don't do what?
In the city of Greenville, you're not allowed to make your own homemade fire pits. You actually have to buy a commercial fire pit, like one from Lowe's. You can do that in the city of Greenville, but you actually have to follow commercial guidelines. And that's the only kind of fire pit that is allowed in the city of Greenville limits.
Who knows this? Okay,
come get him, Jessica. Come get him.
That's incredibly new to me. It's just that I didn't know. I used to live in Winterville. Now I live in Greenville. I'm about to leave Greenville if I can't make my own fire pit. Come on. You got to be kidding me.
Come get him. All right, Jessica, I do have a serious question for you because Vernon and myself were talking about this a little while ago. Since I'm originally from the North Jersey, and I'm a former firefighter, and from all my experience, there has always been a sign on the back of a fire truck or ambulance, keep back 500 feet or maybe 300, 200. But I no longer see those signs in the back of apparatus now. Is there a particular reason why, if you know?
I actually am not sure why that's not on the back of ours. I'm just not sure. However, we always say, a lot of people just are unaware that if you see lights or sirens, you're supposed to pull to the right.
Exactly.
Just people are just unaware. They're just uneducated about that. But yeah, so if you see lights or sirens or hear lights or sirens coming from behind, please slow down, use caution, and pull to the right so that they can safely go around you.
And now I think in the state of North Carolina, if the lights are red, blue, or amber, you are to pull over to the side of the road. But I think that maybe the signs are not on the back of the apparatus anymore, is because these days firefighters are not on the back of the truck; they're inside of the cab. Could that be a reason why I'm thinking? I didn't want to assume that. That's why I asked.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, so I can't really answer that. But anytime there's somebody on our vehicle, they're always in the cabin and they're always in a seatbelt.
Yeah, that's probably why. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ranger. This question is for the Ranger. I got 2 questions. No, I got 3. Like Miss Jessica. I got 3. That's a magic number. Okay. When it comes to animals, what's your interaction with animals around in hunting season? Are you guys driving different routes because of hunters? Do you dry snitch on hunters to the wildlife officers if you find people hunting on lands that are not supposed to? And are you responsible for protecting us even on private property? Do you patrol that area? How do you integrate yourself into the forest, or do you just go sit in the office and wait for a call?
Sure. So a lot of our interactions with wildlife would just be coming across them while we're either surveying land or driving. So same sort of interactions anybody else would. Might see the wildlife, stay a safe distance away from it. As far as hunting goes, I don't believe we've come across any hunters. It is not our jurisdiction within the North Carolina Forest Service, our agency, to do the wildlife management side of things. As you mentioned, that would probably fall under the Wildlife Resources Commission to look into those sort of things. So we'd probably refer anything that we thought was odd to them and let them track that down from there.
And Coach Garrison, you might want to call in on my show probably in the next week or 2. I'll have the director on from Pitt County Animal Services to talk about all their things that they do. So you might want to pose that question to them as a call in.
Sure enough. All right. The last question to the Ranger would be, I was researching North Carolina Forestry Services online just a little bit, and I saw one gentleman was driving a truck that looked like a regular truck to me with toolboxes on it, but he had 200 gallons of water in the truck somewhere. Do you have a truck as such that has water and a hose 1/4 mile long that you can fight a small fire?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are kind of the most common vehicles that we'll use. We call them brush trucks. Pretty much it's just a little bit of a more rugged pickup truck, if you will. As you mentioned, we got the toolboxes in the back, plenty of different tools that we can use in aiding our fire suppression efforts. And then there's just a huge box, a huge tank in the back that holds many, many gallons of water. And as you mentioned, there's a long hose that we can pull out into the woods as well.
And I'd like to pose a question to both of you, the Ranger and Miss Jessica Blackwell, the PIO. Since Thanksgiving is among us, do you have any safety tips for our listening audience?
Sure.
And particularly for hearing impaired individuals.
Sure. I can give some safety tips that we love to give out all year, but definitely pertinent right now.
Yes.
Just go through several of them. We understand that, sometimes people are going to have fire outside, a little campfire in the evening, or maybe they want to burn some debris or some leaves in their yard. And we just want to reiterate, be safe about that. So try not to burn on dry, windy days. We want to keep that fire small, not tall. We want to make sure you're fully prepared when you're burning. Keep a hose or a bucket, steel rake or a shovel, just something to put the fire out. Good idea to keep that phone nearby too, just in case things get out of hand. You don't want to use kerosene, gasoline, diesel fuel, or other flammable liquids to speed up the burning. Just let it take its time. And if you have charcoal briquettes, maybe doing some grilling, you want to make sure they get fully soaked so they don't keep smoldering. And of course, never leave your fire. You want to make sure you stay with it until it's completely out.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Miss Jessica, you got a few points you want to toss in there in regards to fire safety than
so
ahead.
I have a couple things. So as far as cooking, of course, make sure we say stand by your pan, so that being attentive to your cooking. And then, especially if you're having children in the kitchen, because a lot of times your family's over during the holidays, making sure they're like at least a minimum of 3 feet away from hot surfaces, because they can get burned. And then they make sure you kind of declutter your kitchen before you start to cook. And then also we are getting into those colder evenings. We've seen a drastic change in temperatures the past couple of nights, and we do tend to see people use their space heaters. Make sure if you are using a space heater that you plug it directly into the wall. Don't use an extension cord. We have seen fires start from space heaters. I know that's not related to cooking, but I did want to touch on that because we have seen fires recently from space heaters. So make sure that you're not using an extension cord, that you're plugging it directly into the wall, and that your space heaters also need space. They need about a 3-foot radius from the unit. So don't put it near a blanket, near a couch, near a bed. It needs to be 3 feet clearance from the heater.
And I think if you're cooking, you don't want to leave anything that's combustible near an open flame or something that could get extremely hot and burst into flames.
Yeah, and don't leave your pot holders near the stove or any kind of rags or anything like that can catch fire as well. And for the people, I know you mentioned hard of hearing, make sure that you have individuals that can hear, test your smoke alarms, and that you have bed shakers in your home so that whenever you do fall asleep, that you're awakened by your bed shaker alarm if you have one of those in your home.
Absolutely.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate the 2 representatives here today. Thank you so much. Would you both agree to come back next year?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we just barely scratched the surface. I have a lot more questions, and I'm gonna fill out my complaint about that fire pit thing. And I'm just disheartened. Anyways, I'm gonna have to go shopping.
I said she's coming to get you.
Got them code enforcement or tickets or something. I'm sure they have to enforce that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate it. We're going to head over to Muhammad for a final tip of the year, and we'll close this show out with some casual conversation between me and Glenn, because I got to really tell him something.
And let me just say, I really appreciate Miss Blackwell being on today and the Ranger. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so very much. I'm looking forward to seeing you next year.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Thanks,
you, sir.
guys. Take care.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
Mr. Muhammad.
Mr. Muhammad, what's going on, sir, in regards to cybersecurity, our final tip of the year? How can you help us?
Well, if you want to download files, make sure you download them in the trusted resources, because there are many files that cannot be safe. You'll be noticed if you click in the file, it says this file may damage your device, then delete it. Don't open it. So if you click the one that's safer, then you can accept that one. While the one that says it may damage your device, it could really damage your device by maybe infecting a virus or random pop-outs, one of the other.
Well, thank you, Mr. Muhammad. We want to spend this last 2 minutes on one current event, and there's some research that Dr. Johnson did. They had an organized crime dragnet in Monmouth County in New Jersey. This is what we wanted to tell you about. And they arrested 29 people, I believe.
I think it was 34.
34 people, I believe, at one time across that county. And what they decided to do is to think ahead, to prepare for when one got arrested, I suppose. It was a network of a lot of police departments, a lot of law enforcement agencies represented. And they said, well, when we start the dragnet, if you will, how are we going to, these guys are going to communicate. These guys are going to all communicate and coordinate and use their escape routes, if you will, contingency plans, to be professional about it. And so that county or that law enforcement entity that it created itself was a collaboration of all of those officers and agencies, decided to literally shut the power in that county for a certain amount of time until they got their roundup.
Operation Lights Out. The whole entire county was pitch black. So nobody was able to call these drug dealers to alert them that the raid was about to take place.
Yo, Bobby.
That is remarkable. I have never, ever heard anything like that happen before until this past week and a half when this happened.
In order to get that approved, man, just think that, you had to think about putting people in jeopardy, the lives of people on oxygen machines and all of that kind of stuff. So it couldn't have lasted very long.
But here's the thing. They got some known drug dealers off the street, and they're all facing federal racketeering charges.
Man, that's some bad news.
In addition to the drug charges, so they're going to wait for a long time.
I want to thank Sergeant Darnell, who's been a correspondent throughout the year, and other people who, and distinguishable guests who have joined us. Muhammad joined us, and we really look forward to seeing you in the new year. Love you guys. See you top of the year.
Thank you, everybody. So long.